Now, it's been another big week of our PM, and I don't know how else to put this, but sucking up to the Chinese President Xi on the world stage. Lots of talk from the two leaders at the G20 about a wonderful trade partnership, but not so much as a whimper about the ever-increasing hostility from Beijing. Joining me now to discuss this and more, defence expert Lincoln Parker. Link, always great to see you. I know that China is our biggest trading partner. I know this relationship matters. I'd much rather have dialogue than not. But at what cost? How do you rate what's gone on publicly? Because that's all we can really judge over the past week.
Yeah, Erin, we saw the Prime Minister at the G20 meetings and we saw the releases coming out of the Labor government talking about Prime Minister Albanese meeting on the sidelines with Xi Jinping of China, and it really looked like these were sort of secret squirrel meetings where the Australian Prime Minister was having a sort of like a conspiring kind of discussion with Xi Jinping of China. And the Labor government was saying, well, Prime Minister Albanese was discussing, the incoming United States President Donald Trump and what's that going to mean for world trade and trade with China. And I'm just trying to get my head around why would the Australian Prime Minister be playing any role to help the Chinese President in some sort of secret meetings, and what would Albanese know about Donald Trump and the new administration going forward? And I just kind of thought it just had a very poor look about it. It doesn't reflect well on Australia. And they're talking about fair trade and free trade, and I'm not really quite sure what that even means. Yeah,
it's really interesting, and particularly at this time, and I know that most probably, almost certainly for Trump and all the people involved there, the focus would be domestically for them at the moment, transition, et cetera, et cetera. But surely they'd be keeping an eye on the rest of the world and starting to work out themselves who's an ally, who's not, who they can trust, who they can rely on. Is this potentially muddying the waters there?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good start for Prime Minister Albanese to be going and talking to our biggest adversary and certainly the United States' enemy, the People's Republic of China President Xi Jinping. And then to go out and say that, we're talking about fair trade and free trade, and we just know that there's absolutely no truth to fair trade or free trade. I mean, free trade is what has killed the Australian worker. It has killed Australian manufacturing. We have no refineries here anymore. I know this was something that your old man used to talk about because we're so vulnerable, and yet that's exactly what our Prime Minister is doing. And the United States have said under the new President Trump that he wants their allies to start doing more of their own heavy lifting as opposed to relying on others, and yet here we've got our Prime Minister going and having secret meetings with the Chinese.
Which is fair enough, to be honest. Not the meetings, but pulling our own weight. Before you go, I need to ask you about what happened in Adelaide. So they're calling it almost like a military version of a fire festival, that festival that was just horrific and people paid a lot of money for. What happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, this was news to me. I saw it today and, considering that I'm in this industry and have been for quite a long time, I didn't even know about it. And yet here is the Australian government making promises to people that wanted to attend this conference that there would be lots of officials and MPs would be attending, and none of that happened. It was false promises. It looks like it was a massive waste of taxpayer money and just more incompetence from a Labor government that is stripping money out of the Department of Defence and leaving Australia weaker.
Well, Link, as someone who gave a speech recently at an event where there were more people on stage than there were in the audience, I can relate to a lot of people involved in that. Lincoln Parker, brilliant as always. I miss having you in the studio here, but lovely to have you anyway.